Good evening. I'm Dan McDermott. The grand jury in Clayton, Missouri, has just returned a decision to not indict Ferguson police officer Darren Wilson in the case of the shooting of Michael Brown. The lead prosecutor there said that there just wasn't evidence to indict, and that he sort of said social media had taken off and said a bunch of things. So I'm going to just say my personal view. I remember hearing about the case initially, and then I saw on TV the young man who was with uh, Michael Brown say that his hands were up, and the officer just shot him. Then later a video came out, was leaked, I guess, showing that young man and the Michael Brown in a robbery. And then there was just mayhem in Ferguson. So I've asked our general counsel for Warren and Frederick County Report, Georgia Rossiter, to come on and just sort of give us your view as an attorney. Now, obviously, you're not in the Missouri bar, but grand juries are largely similar. And so tell us, just give us your initial reaction, because I think you predicted this outcome.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that from the very beginning, I kind of predicted that this is what was going to happen, largely because of the way the prosecutor handled it and not going ahead and arresting the officer without the grand jury. I think he kind of punted this, if you will, and he punted it to the grand jury because he didn't think that there was enough to indict. So it was his way of letting himself off the hook. I think it was kind of a mistake, though, because he kind of allowed there to be more questions about the process, whereas if he had come out originally and said, here's the evidence, here's what we have, and here's why we aren't going to seek charges against the officer in this case, I think it would have been better received by the public than what has happened, because now there are just more questions, because in the public's mind there's been this secret session that has taken place that has returned no true bill, saying that this officer basically did nothing wrong whatsoever, when over the last 3 months there's been more and more information leaked by the media saying that he in fact did do things that were wrong. So I don't know that it's worked out the way that he had hoped it would, but he certainly has absolved himself of the liability, that's for certain.
Okay, Georgia, let me ask you this, because I know we have limited time, because you have a case tomorrow, and
Yes.
You're preparing for in trial. So I know that obviously this is a very, very controversial case. Rodney King comes to mind, and there has already been violence and arrests there. And so it was sort of on the cusp of this. So I've heard that argument that you just made, that this was very unusual. And I've also heard the argument that it makes sense because you're trying to placate protesters, and that it's a very sensitive issue, and that he's sort of become a cause celeb, not just in this particular case, but this is sort of being seen as representative of some of the situations of police brutality we've seen over this past year. I remember the Albuquerque, the homeless guy on a hill, and they said, put your weapon down. He did, and then they gunned him down. The black guy in a gas station, and a cop said, show me your driver's license, and he reached in the car to get the driver's license, and the cop shot him like a dozen times or 14 times or something. So we've seen cases similar to this, and in that case, the last one in the gas station, I think the cop was charged with a felony and fired. But it's sort of become bigger. But the grand jury, talk about the grand jury process in this case, because there were 12 grand jurors, 9 were white, 3 were black, to represent the racial makeup of the geography where the grand jury is, not where Ferguson is, which is about 2/3 black. Also, they were shown basically all the evidence that they had. They were able to interview every witness of note, including Officer Wilson, for 3 or 4 hours, I think, in mid-September, September 12th, I believe. And they recorded all the information. And he's going to release that. He announced that tonight, that they're going to release it, I think, immediately. He had to get the judge's approval. So we're going to be able to hear the tapes. I assume the names of the witnesses will be redacted, because we saw a lot of witnesses on the Michael Brown side, the anti-Darren Wilson side, on television, we did not see any of the witnesses, or at least I didn't. I think there were 8 or 9 witnesses, all or most African American, who were there and either all or in part corroborated Officer Wilson's version of events, but they were afraid to go on television because of what was going on. So given all that, tell me from your perspective, having dealt with grand juries before, and Kadea's got a question ready next, how unusual was this? Have you ever seen this happen before?
Number one, I don't deal with grand juries because I'm a defense attorney. So that's a prosecutorial tool that I've never been a part of. So, but my understanding of a grand jury is that they can be used the way that he has used them, which is basically to investigate, if you will. I have never known it to be this broad. I've never known it to take this long to come back with an indictment or with a true bill or without a true bill, if you will. I mean, I don't know what happened in that process. Nobody knows what happened in that process. There's been a lot of guessing as to what happened. It's been portrayed as a document dump, as if, the prosecutors just walked in the room and set all this stuff on the desk and said, here you go, figure it out. I doubt that is what happened. I'm sure that it was presented in some fashion, that witnesses were examined, if you will. The grand jury is allowed to ask questions, which is something that doesn't normally happen in a trial. But it sounds almost like it was an actual trial. Whereas usually, what I know of grand juries is that prosecutors come forward and they basically present the evidence that they want to present to try to get the indictment. I don't think that's what's happened here. I think that what happened here is that he presented all of the evidence and let the grand jury make up their own mind, which is different. It is very different because prosecutors, by the by, prosecute. They don't try to get people off, if you will. And it seems that in this case, what he did was he gave them the evidence that they needed to make a decision one way or the other. So it's almost like a trial, more than just a grand jury investigation, if you will.
One last question before I hand it over to Kadeas for a question, but the handling of the decision to record everything and then release all the evidence and release the testimony. I assume they're going to redact the witnesses' names, but I'm not sure. And the decision to do this the same day, at 9 p.m., and it was clear to I think everyone who was studying this that the decision was going to be either no indictment or the least of the options, or they wouldn't have been closing the school. I'm sure that word was secretly leaked to the governor about the National Guard and stuff like that it was unlikely that they would indict, but or all these preparations likely wouldn't have been done because it would have kind of looked silly in retrospect if everyone was just cheering and popping champagne corks and schools are closed. So what do you think about that? How would you have handled this? We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if this is going to be the Watts riots or if this is going to be peaceful, we shall overcome, singing in the streets, or something in between. How would you have handled this if you were on the other side of that courtroom and you were the prosecutor? How would you have handled the release of this? Would you have released some of the testimony ahead of time, or how would you have dealt with this?
Well, you can't release the testimony ahead of time. The grand jury is secret. And the only reason why he is releasing it now is, my best guess, is because there was no true bill. So now the case is closed, so now he can release it. But he could not possibly have released any of the grand jury testimony prior to them deciding whether or not to return a true bill. So that's not even a question. As to whether or not the witnesses' names will be redacted, I don't think they have to. I think that if he's saying the case is closed, I can release his documents, I think he can release the names of the witnesses. I don't think he will, because I think that there's a safety precaution that needs to be met here. So I don't think he will release them, but I think that he could. But this case is, to me, it's kind of it's political in nature more than it is legal in nature. There's a mixing here, if you will. I mean, they've handled it very politically, right? Instead of handling it very legally, because if it had been handled very legally, then from the very beginning, this prosecutor would have made a decision to arrest or not arrest, and that's not what happened. So from the very beginning, this became a political thing rather than a legal thing, if you will. So
and your thinking
I
is
wouldn't
that he
have handled
should
it that way.
You think he should have been charged and should have been put on trial?
I think if this is the way that you were going to handle it, that's what you should have done. I think you should have charged him. You should have made the whole process open, just like O.J. Simpson was. Let everybody watch it. Let everybody decide whether or not if it was right or wrong, rather than have this secret, what everyone is viewing as a very secret process, which it is. The grand jury is, but it could have been avoided. But I don't think he had enough to arrest him. I really don't. I don't think he did. I don't think he should have been charged. I think that he should have come out in the very beginning and said, do I think that he should have fired 10 shots? Probably not. I think that in and of itself is going to make people think that there was some degree of excess, if you will. But at the same time, I can't be inside of that officer's head. I wasn't there. I don't know what really happened. But I do know that the physical evidence has come back and said that he shouldn't have been charged. And I think he knew that in the very beginning. So I think he's almost allowed all of this to happen for nothing, where he could have just said, the physical evidence says that he shouldn't be charged, I'm not charging him. He could have just let them get a special prosecutor and have a special prosecutor say that. But instead he did this, and I don't understand why.
Yeah, we've lost Cadeas, technical glitch because he was on mobile. But one last, I'll give you an opportunity. Yeah, some of this stuff, it was so affected by social media and by outside folks coming in. For example, the autopsy came in, and it said that his hands could not have been raised when he was shot.
Right.
And they're still tonight saying hands up, don't shoot. So it is about the larger issue of. And there's a wonderful interview with President Obama and George Stephanopoulos from this week, today, or yesterday, and they were. President Obama discussed this. He talked about how, police departments need to. It's best if they represent the community. You have, I think, what were there, 1 or 2 blacks on the police force, and the city's 2/3 black, and I don't know if they're going to release the vote on the grand jury, or if they even release that to the prosecutor, because it took 9 out of 12 to say yes. 9 were white, 3 were black. I imagine that's going to be an issue. Did they release the vote, and would that have been normal to do?
They won't. They can't.
It's like a firing squad. You can't. Nobody knows.
No, I think the statute doesn't allow for it. So I don't think that statutorily they can release the vote. I don't even think the grand jurors can say how they voted. I think that they can say, like if I was on the grand jury, I think that I could come forward and say I didn't vote for a true bill. But I don't think they can say how the other people voted. I think it has to remain secret. And I'm not even positive that they can say how they voted.
If ordinarily, my last question, then whatever you want to say. I've kept you longer than I promised because, like I said, Georgia is very gracious to join us tonight because she has a trial in the morning, and I think she has files and folders spread all over her bed and every table surface in her home. But ordinarily, grand jurors are not allowed to talk. It's I think a federal crime if they speak about the proceedings. But
yes.
Is there a mechanism where a judge could allow, because frankly, to lessen tensions, I don't think it would be a bad idea to let Steve Croft, or frankly the most aggressive black liberal journalist you can think of, who's a prominent national figure, aggressively question this grand jury about this. I think that might lessen tensions. Is that even a legal possibility? Could a judge allow that? And would you support it if so?
No. I don't think a judge can allow it. Number one, it's statutory. So a legislator would have to allow for it, and I don't think that they would, and I would not support it. I think it's supposed to be secret. It's constitutionally secret. There's no reason to allow for that. None whatsoever. None. And if you open that door, then people are going to be asking to participate and to see and to know about grand juries all the time, and it's going to become more and more difficult to get grand jurors.
Any final thoughts?
Huh?
Any final thoughts on this whole thing?
Well, I just think that they were idiots to announce that at 1 o'clock they had a decision and then wait until 9 o'clock to tell us. I think that was really stupid. They allowed people to congregate and get angry, and I certainly hope that nothing terrible happens because of it. But
to be fair, though, they also allowed the National Guard and the police department to congregate, so that they had adequate numbers to agitate the local population.
Exactly. So now you've got two sets of people equally pissed off. That's great. It was stellar. It was I don't know what's going on now. It's all blurs on the TV. They aren't really concentrating on anything. Apparently there's gunshots that have been fired. So.
Okay, well, Georgia Rossiter is an attorney. She is our general counsel for our newspaper company. She's in Winchester, Virginia. She is not a Missouri criminal defendant, but she does have some game. So you can get information about her if you want to hire her if you're in Winchester or whatever. GeorgiaRossiterLaw.com. Georgia, thank you so much for and good luck in your case tomorrow.
Thank you.
All victory to our team. And also for
Yes.
folks watching this, if you're watching live, President Obama's, we got the 2-minute warning about 90 seconds ago. He's about to speak on this. So we'll see what happens. And obviously, I don't speak for Georgia. She's a great spokesperson herself, but I'm sure both of us hope for calm and peace in Ferguson tonight. So anyway,
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I'm Dan McDermott, and we will be returning we'll have Google Plus Week Friday at 8:30 Eastern, 5:30 Pacific. Our Android Week, I think, we're not sure when it's going to happen again, because there's a thing I'm doing with the NAACP former chairman guy next week, and we postponed tonight because, frankly, no one's going to watch an Android show when the prosecutor in Ferguson is speaking. So hang on one second, Georgia. To our viewers, thank you very much. We appreciate it. I'm Dan McDermott, and we will see you later on one of our programs. Thanks.